Hey guys, welcome back to Literature with Laura. Today we will be talking about story arcs. Without further ado, let's get into it. So what is a story arc? A story arc is often illustrated as a hill-like diagram and follows the action of the main character or the protagonist. The protagonist works towards the center story goal and is often perceived as the good guy. Contrastingly, the antagonist works against the goal of the story and, as we'll see in the arc, affects the outcome of the story in a negative fashion.
The first section of a story arc is exposition. It includes background information about the protagonist and begins the story as if it is a normal day in this setting. It often gives the location and an overview of who all of the characters are. The next part is conflict. This is when something happens that creates a problem for the protagonist or causes a shift in this normal state. It is the first piece of action, which leads me to the next section of rising action. The rising action is a long sequence of events and is what makes up the majority of the story. It is often classified as everything that happens between the initial conflict and the climax. The climax is the most exciting and dramatic part of the story. It is a turning point for the protagonist. Following the climax is falling action, or the events after the climax. The final section is the resolution, where the audience looks at how things have changed. The resolution concludes the story and wraps everything up and really ties up all of the loose ends. This is often when the final statements are made and when the audience can look at the change from the beginning. Usually it is a positive change and ties up everything together, but sometimes, depending on the author, it is negative. To make this a little clearer, I'll go through an example with the story Cinderella. When it comes to the exposition, we learn that Cinderella has an awful life. She lives with her evil stepsisters and her evil stepmother, and they treat her absolutely horribly. Then comes the conflict, and although when you think of conflict you might think of bad, this is actually a good conflict. It's just the first piece of action, when the whole family gets the invitation to go to the ball. Then comes the rising action section. Cinderella is forbidden to go to the ball. Then her fairy godmother appears and tells her that she will go. But Cinderella has nothing to wear and no way to get there. But then the fairy godmother casts a spell, turning her rags into a beautiful dress, and she gives her slippers and makes a pumpkin into a carriage. Cinderella then goes to the ball, dances with Prince Charming, and falls in love. But then comes the climax. The spell wears off as the clock strikes midnight, and she runs away, leaving behind her glass slipper. Then comes the falling action section. The prince vows to find the foot that the shoe fits and marry the owner. He goes around town to every house and eventually to Cinderella's house. He tries the shoe on all of the sisters and the mother, but then the shoe fits Cinderella. Then comes the resolution, they get married and live happily ever after.
Now that we've gone through the basics and this example, you can make a story arc for any story you are reading or you create. I hope you learned something new today about story arcs. Thanks for watching. Bye!